And just to run through what we're expecting to see, a 5 year compulsory transition away from lead.
Yes, but that it was, yeah, that's a separate issue. We always knew that was going to happen. That was absolutely
And
inevitable.
we're basically
Retaining the
ready.
5 years. The
Yeah,
important thing was retaining the 5 year transition because there were
yeah,
noises of pushing for 2 years.
yeah.
So that on that front, that's
We're
yeah,
all
that
done
don't
to
see it as
death
a
with
major
lead.
issue. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So you think shotguns becoming the same as rifles and individual guns being licensed?
Well, I mean, it's essentially the baseline proposal is to align shotguns with the firearms, and that they're not with a firearms license, shotgun certificate, a firearms license. They're not going to reduce the level of restriction around firearms, and therefore that means taking shotguns to the same level as Section One. Yeah, and I don't know, have you got a Section One? The basic principle being that you have to have a good reason to have a gun and have to be able to show a good reason. Sorry, so
Hmm.
if you say you want a gun for deer stalking, they will say where, and down to providing a map for the where
Yeah.
of the farm you got and all that sort of stuff. And
Which will be
if you
manageable for people, because after all, the people that have got guns, we do need them. Whether we're competing, whether we're
yeah,
using them for
well,
recreation, whether
we'll
we did the last lot. They did look at doing a review, didn't they, about putting shotguns and rifles on the same thing, and that was ruled out. They made some
well, it
sense.
came from the coroner, and there was a lot of work done to make
There was a
sure it
lot
was
of
ruled
work
out.
done. There was a lot of work
yeah,
done. And
yeah,
obviously, unfortunately, there's been another shooting now, and we're just going to have to see what happens there. But
but this still comes out of comes out of the same place. Yeah, that consultation that the government was responding to was about Keisham and the one in Scotland. There's no others. And Luke Pollard, who was the shadow DEFRA, who's now the housing minister, or something, he's the MP for Keisham. He's been pushing this agenda, and I've
hmm.
known it's alive. Um,
But don't you take
but
some
well,
solace in the fact that the government's so busy dealing with migrants and getting benefits for those that they really, do you think they are going to do this in primary legislation? Do you
I
really think there's enough support? Because there's a lot of Labour people in
well,
rural areas now. Do you think this is at the
Well,
top
well
of
you wouldn't. There's no way you would have put it in the response if you weren't going to do it. Yeah, that's an absolute. You don't. You only can in government. The basic rule: you only consult on something if you want to do it. And they've chosen. They absolutely didn't have to. They could have relied on the position that the last government had taken and cracked on.
which we did
Um,
well out of. So, do you think this is going to happen in the next 2 years, the next 3 years, or do you think they're making a promise to keep them in government further down the line? What are your thoughts?
no, I think they need to do this. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
But
Because they've
when?
been really quite specific as well. So I would expect a consultation in the next few months. Because they said they're going to do it, and the
Mm,
gun lobby and the supporters within the people within the Parliamentary Labour Party will be pushing. Once you've said as a minister you're going to do something, you will be hounded by the people who want it done until it's done. So I mean, I would expect to see a consultation somewhere. I'd expect to see legislation, later this year or next year. Yeah. Think of the 600,000, well, of the 610,000 shotgun certificate holders, it does make the job quite a lot harder. And if you're an entry, which is a critical thing for any sector, any business, if you've been on a stag weekend and been clay shooting and you've
yeah.
quite enjoyed it, you think, oh yeah, I'd quite like to, I'll get myself a silver pigeon, um, whatever you do, and and then the firearms officer comes around and start asking where you're going to use it, and which clay. It's a barrier to entry. There's no doubt about it, and it'll be a barrier to some people renewing. So that by itself, I think, is a big issue. Then, if we're going to license every gun individually, which is what happens with a Section One.
Yeah.
So if I want a semi-auto, I have to go individually and say, can I have a license semi-auto? Good reason for that. Yeah, I want to use it because I want to go wildfowling. Are you a member of Wildfowling Club? You shoot me well.
Yeah.
And then I go to the gun dealer and then go to the gun dealer and say, I'm allowed to, I've got a semi-auto on my ticket, I'm allowed to buy a semi-auto. These are all, those are really quite considerable restrictions. And not only that, obviously, it also becomes hugely bureaucratic for our utterly useless system, firearms licensing system. Don't quote me on the
which is improving. It is improving, Tim. Come on.
I'm just massively skeptical. The idea that you have 43 separate licensing authorities, it's Victorian.
It's if you were gonna design a firearms licensing thing from scratch, you wouldn't do it like that. But
no, it's what they did with cars pre First World War. You went to the local bobby and got local police station and got a driving license or whatever. No, it's just ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. But we are in part to blame ourselves because we're, as a sector, are so conservative. Reactionary, probably better word.
But I was going to say, I don't think there's anything wrong being conservative, Tim, frankly.
And I think this will have, in the long term, will have more impact on shooting than all sorts of other stuff. If you're GMK, Beretta, or a gun dealer, or anything else, I can tell you, you're bloody shitting yourself now, because this puts the brakes. This puts the brakes on the on. It undermines the market essentially, and it will make a lot of people think about whether they're going to continue to have a license, and it will, it's a barrier to entry, and that's a disaster for any business.
Yeah, that's
happy days.
Yeah. I mean, I liken it to when they increase tax on, high-powered engines, it doesn't stop people. When they up tax on tobacco, it doesn't stop people. I think it'll offer gun shops, grounds, the possibility about people having storage at gun shops and grounds, which actually I think might make it more accessible and be better for grounds and businesses. It'll be able to bring them more through the journey. I don't think it's going to be necessarily all bad.
I can't see any upsides to this at all. And the agenda is clearly about, it's progressive restriction.
It's going to stop people slipping through the system, isn't it? Because just the other day there was
No, I mean the Keesham case, which is where this will come from. It had absolutely nothing to do with anyone slipping through the system.
Well, it
had to do with the fact that Devon and Cornwall police,
weren't
utterly incompetent.
They were utterly incompetent. They made a big mistake. They're overhauling the firearms licensing system, which, from what I gather, is going well. Basque are very pleased with how it's gone. I was talking to an FEO the other day. She said, she's been doing it for a long time, but she thought overall for beginners that it was good. I think it might help the sport in the longer term if they get these things over and done with sooner rather than later, and then they're not going to be making any other major changes, are they? Do you not think that?
Well, no, I don't, I'm afraid. I mean, I think there's a progressive agenda, and I'm very much of the case, and have always been, that owning a gun is a responsibility, not a right. So I certainly don't.
It is a right. It is a right, though.
No, it's not. It's not, and it shouldn't be. I don't come from the sort of NRA, American NRA, or table banging and the rest of it. I think we need to be responsible as gun owners. I think we are. I think we've done everything that's reasonable over the years. I think we have a system which is more restrictive than nearly everywhere else in the world, and I don't think that's a problem.
We're the most regulated in society.
As it is. So what on earth justification would you have for going again, for doing more now? And I think it will have a really significant impact on people. As I say, both in terms of people decided whether they're going to renew or not, but also a barrier to entry.
It could be so much worse than what it is. Don't you think they could be really looking at stronger measures?
Well, I mean, and there's only one stronger measure you take, which is you just don't let them don't let private citizens have guns at all. It's that simple. There's not many other places to go from here, and that is, of course, the agenda of the anti-gun lobby, and it's they're very out and clear about that. Our view, obviously, is that responsible citizens should be allowed to have guns for and that there are lots of perfectly legitimate uses for firearms, not only in terms of pest control and wildlife management,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
also for sporting purposes, and
absolutely.
that's a huge benefit for the rural economy.
I
So I
don't
don't
think
know what.
it's going to put those kind of people off. And they're still going to be leaders in the sport. And I think it's, yeah, okay, it's more loopholes, but I think people are going to be up for it. We've
Well, look,
got,
I mean, those of us who already have guns and who are committed users, of course I'll get a bloody certificate. Of course I'll jump through those loopholes because I love my shooting and that's it. But
and
there
that's
are
what I
lots of
think
people.
we're going to see. Certainly the people watching
Yeah,
this,
but
you know,
well, yeah.
roll
I mean,
with it, along with
to
everything else that the government, it's just yet another nail and yet another coffin, isn't it, that this government's doing, really? It's not going
yeah,
well.
well, yeah, which is certainly not a reason to welcome it. And I'm not suggesting you welcome it, but all saying it's acceptable, and I don't think it is. But apart from anything else, Alex, I don't think it can deliver this. I mean, I really, I think the idea they have. I think a lot of them don't have any concept of when I talk to Labour MPs, which I do a lot, and I
Hmm.
tell them that there's 610,000 shotgun certificate holders in the UK, they look at me like I'm mad. Yeah,
Yeah,
they just because no one in their world, no one they know has a shotgun
yeah,
certificate, whereas nearly everyone I know has a shotgun certificate, and so they really have no concept. It's a thing that a few farmers have, and maybe a policeman. That's it.
yeah.
So,
I
so
don't think that they've got the infrastructure to really
um,
handle this properly.
so I think in reality there's a long battle out there. We're going to have to fight hard in Parliament. We're going to have to make the case and explain. But at the end of that, I have no doubt that we will have more restrictive legislation, especially around shotguns, and that is a really bad thing.
Yeah,
And we can say, because people like you and I might, we'll go out there, we'll renew our certificates. We already know how to shoot. I'll get one for my boys, and that sort of stuff, and my
yeah.
girls if they're interested, obviously. but but there are lots of people who will find this a barrier to entry, and if we are stopping people coming into shooting, then shooting dies a death. Shooting dies a long, slow death, and that really concerns me. And I come back to the point: it is not justified. We
No,
will do anything as a sector. We will do anything that is reasonable and ensures that guns don't get into the hands of the wrong people.
absolutely. And
And
we've been doing that
yeah,
a long time. But how do you feel then? So when the next government comes, how confident are you that these things are going to be reversed if they go through?
absolutely not confident at all because they won't be. It doesn't work like that. I mean, whether you're talking about firearms legislation or animal welfare legislation, it only goes in one direction.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to fight the battle now. We have to be, absolutely ruthless in ensuring that there is as little change as possible. If government really does bring forward legislation, we're in a difficult situation because we've got a huge Labour majority, and probably a House of Lords that's not going to be particularly keen on interfering. Although one of the upsides of this proposal is that it wasn't in Labour's manifesto,
No, it wasn't.
and therefore there's a thing. If you're a proper parliamentary geek, there's a thing called the Salisbury Convention, which means the House of Lords doesn't block legislation that's in the government's manifesto.
Yeah.
So potentially, if this goes too far, there will be plenty of peers who on grounds of sort of reasonableness, we'll want to ask questions about this. So
I mean,
there may
it
be
remains to be seen though. There's no real cause to panic as yet, is there? There's no real time frame as yet. There's no real changes as yet. We've just got to
no.
monitor.
There's a very clear proposal, though. I
There's a
mean, this.
proposal.
Yeah, I don't want to. This is really serious. This is potentially the biggest change to firearms licensing since 1996. That's where we are. And there was a step change then, and we know why. And
Yeah.
this looks like another step change. And could this this will make it much more difficult to get a shotgun certificate. Let's be very, very blunt about it, and that
Yeah.
means fewer people will come into shooting, and some people will decide to get out. And there won't be, these aren't people who would have been who necessarily would have been a danger to society
No,
or
no.
the least safe. It's just people for whom
They can't be doing
it
with
is
the
particularly
aggravation.
difficult.
It's inconvenience,
Absolutely.
isn't it? It's hoop jumping.
Well, inconvenience, but also I worry about shooting becoming increasingly exclusive as well. Which is not a good look. The more people who shoot, the better, because that brings us a broad societal defence.
Yeah.
And as I say, when I talk to MPs and talk about 600,000, 610,000 licenses, probably 600,000 odd, or certainly well over half a
Yeah, it's
million
well over
households
half a
in the
million.
UK.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's well over half a million households. It's 610,000, something like that, shotgun certificates. That's a big number, and it does make people sit up and think, especially Labour MPs in new Labour MPs in
In rural
constituencies,
seats,
rural
yeah.
areas,
Yeah.
who are already
I do
taking the
just wonder.
hammering.
I'm sure with a strong campaign and more information getting out to the right people, I'm more hopeful on this than you are, obviously.
I'm hopeful, and I'm hopeful,
Are
and
you?
we'll
Are
fight a
you
battle.
hopeful, Tim? Are you hopeful?
No, well, look. I mean, there's two different things. One is this is really serious. There's no doubt about that. This is a massive challenge. I do think there are practical issues around the firearms licensing system, and also arguments that we can make, which may, we're probably going to be arguing for a more restrictive, shotgun certificates rather than aligning completely with firearms
Which
licenses.
they have only recently, in the past couple of years, looked at that and done a review and decided that wasn't the thing. So,
the consultation that the government was responding to was in part about addressing some of those things. So, like issues like referees
yeah,
and we've also made the changes on medical markers, and over the last 10 years, which has been a huge amount of work been going on between government, very positive work between
yeah, I
government
think so.
and shooting organisations.
The police have been reasonable. The shooters have been great over coming over to lead. The manufacturers have been really good. If anything, I think the threats from before have helped to bring people together. We're overhauling the licensing system, and I think, I think we just need to be ready for it, see what's coming down the line, and try and keep the mood up, I would say.
Oh well, there'll always be positive,
Yes.
ludicrous optimism, but
Yeah.
the don't there is a part of this, not all of it, but a part of this is about the sort of the politics of
Yeah, of course it
left
is.
and
Yeah.
right and
Yeah.
town and country and all that sort of thing as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
And that's the bit that's really challenging,
Mm.
because there's a significant part of society, and we have to accept that, who just don't see any role for gun ownership, for
But
private
there's
gun
a
ownership.
huge body of evidence that supports it. You've only got to look at things like the Olympics, you've got to look at the conservation records. By the time people have got those facts and figures in front of them, and like you say, the House of Lords are in a tricky situation because it wasn't in their manifesto. This has just come up from nowhere. There's no actual time frame. It's going to be primary legislation. I don't think there's any need to panic just yet. I think, if anything, they've put the cards on the table a little bit too soon. We can prepare for it, like we've prepared for the so-called lead ban, but let's face it, there isn't a lead ban.
Well, there's going to be a lead ban
Yeah, they've been
yeah,
saying that for 5 years. We're ready for that.
yeah,
We are
yeah.
completely ready for that as an industry, and I think with them saying what they want to do, we can be ready for that as an industry. Ground owners, gun manufacturers, everybody, we can gear up for it, and
Yeah, but there is no. Yeah, I think they're different. They're different cases, because in the end, lead, we don't have an argument. I mean, I think my view, which is I think we should be giving up. I gave up using the stuff some time ago, and I think we're progressive on that. And it doesn't impact and won't impact on the future of shooting. I think this is a different ballgame. Fundamental restrictions on the
it's
ability
about entry, isn't
to
it?
own a shotgun is
Yeah,
it's a much more serious issue, and
Mm.
I think the timetable, to get it rolling this early in a parliament as well is challenging, because
Well, it's astonishing.
But, well, never be shocked. I'm never shocked by anything in politics. But one thing, in Parliament, the parliamentary tactics which we use most successfully to stop things happening, essentially focus around delaying stuff to a point that people give up. And given the fact that this has been announced early in the Parliament, and presumably we'll see a consultation this year, and then legislation from that. Running this into the long grass is going to be it's going to be extremely challenging. In fact, I don't think we're going to be able to do it, especially given the size of the Labour majority. The challenge will, which is massive. So whatever they decide to happen, we have a very, very a government which, bizarrely, given how many missteps it's made in the first relatively few months of its term, we have a government which still, we need to remember, has a massive majority and can essentially do whatever it likes. So we mustn't underestimate the threat here.
Thanks, Tim.
Really good to see you, and give me a shout anytime.